Something many rail fans can agree upon is that to get the best trains, you have to get up early. Today is no different, and after a 2-hour drive, I arrive into Hinton just as loaded coal train C11812 departs. I quickly headed east along the Greenbrier River, arriving into Talcott, West Virginia. Just 10 miles to the east of Hinton, the legend of John Henry was born. In February of 1870, workers began drilling through the Big Bend Mountain, saving the C&O 7 miles of trackage while the Greenbrier River meanders around this mountain. Over 800 men cut the 6,450-foot original tunnel through the mountain. This was dangerous work, and rockfalls were commonplace, with death always a possibility. Let's get back to John Henry. He was said to be a worker for the C&O when the railroad brought in a steam drill to help speed up the work. Henry was known as the strongest and fastest man on the railroad, and he set out to prove just that. He set out to prove that the workers could drill rock further and faster than the machine, and he would do just that, drilling a 14-foot hole into the rock while the drill only reached 9 feet. Legend says that John Henry would later die of exhaustion. The original Great Bend Tunnel, seen here, opened in 1872 and remained in service until 1974. The new Big Bend Tunnel was completed in 1932 and now serves as the only passage through the Great Bend Mountain. With 200 loads for Newport News, CSXT 3333 and ET44AH leads the C11812 east as it rejoins the banks of the Greenbrier River. I was able to get back ahead of the train by Pence Springs as they roll downhill. Assisting the two head-end motors are two more big GEs, acting as mid-train distributed power units. From what I could tell, it seems the C118 is having communication issues with their end-of-train device. They contacted the dispatcher, who told them to come to a stop and check it out. Hinton is a major terminal along the C&O, where the Allegheny and New River subdivisions meet. Check out these two old relics: a C&O passenger car, designated for maintenance of way service, and some sort of old steamer. I'm not quite sure the story on it especially, as it seems like something maybe custom built for service around here. If you know the background on that steamer, please leave it down in the comments below. I'm curious to know. Both have clearly not been moved for quite some time though. While in Hinton, I heard talk of a mine run heading westbound. I would head to Meadow Creek, but there was no sign of it here anywhere. Just a clear signal for Amtrak's eastbound Cardinal and a tied-down rail train with two freshly rebuilt Huntington SD70 Max. These are by far my favorite locomotives on the CSX roster. It would take me a minute to realize that the R227 mine run is running up the old NF&G line to Angie in West Virginia. This is the first train that I've ever had the opportunity of chasing up the line. The first place I would be able to get ahead of the train by would be Meadow Bridge, West Virginia. This line is CSX's Sewell Valley Subdivision, running from Meadow Creek to Neyland, West Virginia, although the line is long abandoned past Rainelle. This subdivision, along with a collection of many more in the surrounding valleys, were once part of the Nicholas, Fayette, and Greenbrier Railroad, named for the counties it passes through. It was created in 1929 to resolve an ever-growing battle between the C&O and New York Central for which road would serve the surrounding mines and rich timber industry. As we head north, we will learn more about the NF&G. With the Louisville and Nashville Heritage Unit in the lead, R227 passes through the sleepy town of Meadow Bridge. The NF&G is known for its steep grades and sharp curves. With me being late to the chase on R227, I unfortunately missed a rare opportunity to catch the train through the Claypool loops. The loops replaced a set of switchbacks, alleviating some of the steep grades and operating slowdowns. Some sections of 3.5% gradient still exist to this day. While not as steep here at Springdale, it gives the engineer and his two GEs a good test as they crest the grade. It wasn't uncommon at one time for the NF&G to see multiple trains a day in opposite directions. Nowadays, there is no more than one train active at a time, thus the removal of many passing sightings, like here at Springdale. 4 miles up the rails, and the steep downhill grade levels out through Bellwood. Here's something I've never seen personally, a snow grade sign. I'm not exactly sure what this sign means, but it certainly has something to do with the steep grade it is protecting. If you know anything about it, once again, leave it down in the comments below. Surely you didn't think the tracks were going to level out through here. Right back up grade goes R227. By the time they got into Rainelle, they were waiting to get track authority onto the Rupert subdivision on the northern side of town. At 11:50, R227 heads north over the Conneaut Ave crossing. At the northern end of the yard, CSXT 1850 diverges onto the Rupert subdivision. The Rupert subdivision runs north to Clearco, West Virginia, passing through Angia, where this train is bound to load. Rainelle used to be the junction where the tracks to Quinwood and Russellville, West Virginia would split off. The Sewell Valley subdivision of Russellville has been turned into a rail trail, while the G&E subdivision to Quinwood remains in place, albeit out of service. That leaves the Rupert subdivision as the only active piece of track north of town. Rainelle was once the major terminal for the NF&G, with an assembly yard and a locomotive servicing facility. Not much remains today, except for a 4-track yard and some sidings for setting off bad order cars. At Rupert, the former Raiders Run industrial track once split off here, heading towards the Meadow River Lumber Company, one of the major timber industries along the line. Today, all that remains at milepost CAH7 is a switch stand and some overgrown trackage. The Rupert Subdivision turns back north through town here, adjusting its course towards Allegheny. I quickly headed north towards Kessler, getting back ahead of the train as they roll down the old jointed rail. Curiously, the jointed rail installed on the Rupert subdivision dates to the days of the old NF&G, while the pieces of welded rail laying trackside are from 1982. The only thing I can figure is that they removed the newer welded rail from another location and are waiting to install it here to replace the 1926 jointed rail. I heard some news about the Georgia Railroad Heritage Unit running down the old R.J. Corman back to Thurmond, so I decided to peel off from this R227 as they load their train at Allegheny. By the time I was reaching Meadow Creek, it was clear I'm not going to be able to make it, so I decided instead to swing back into the eastern end of the yard for a couple of road trains. I set up just to the east of those fresh ST-70 Max for loaded grain train G63113. G631 is as-needed grain loads from Columbus, Ohio to Hamlet, North Carolina. Someone clearly had a bad day here at Meadow Creek with this lang trackside. Heading east towards Hinton, I heard westbound empty coal drag E11811 call the signal at CW Cabin. I decided to opt for the scenic view of the Brooks Overlook, with the train hauling 200 empties west towards Beach Creek along the New River. The train is passing tied-down loaded coal train C20912, awaiting their turn for a crew change at Hinton. We'll check them out in a minute. ET44AH 3255 is solo on the head end of C20912, with 90 cars loaded at McClure, Virginia. The engineer carefully stopped just short of the intermediates here at Brooks. Within minutes of arriving into Hinton, CSXT 3083 is leading another empty coal train west out of the yard. They headed a few miles down the road to Bass Lake to catch them departing. Well, that's certainly not the train I saw departing Hinton, is it? This is E211, doing all of track speed west, with yet another Huntington SD70 Mac in the lead. They somehow snuck in front of that other empty coal track, who must be holding in the yard. Here's that 3083, leading E34411. They're clearly just pulling from the yard, not going near as fast as E200. This was certainly a good day along the C&O, especially with that mine run heading up the NF&G. I hope you all enjoyed this as much as I did, and thank you all for watching. Until next time, this is Commonwealth Rail, out.